Yeah.
The yoga empire.
It is an empire. It really is an empire. I mean, I don't know who Vader is, but it's
I was just gonna say that. I don't know who Vader is either. There's like a conglomerate of Vaders.
Okay, so welcome to this episode of Yoga Rebels. Prior to the camera being turned on, we were getting a little fired up.
Yeah.
Talking about some of the, as you said, the nefarious stuff going on. And so we're going to talk about that. I want to talk about that now, since we're on it. So I'm Burgundy.
I'm Lauren.
And thank you for being here. So, all right. So our main thing is that we're trying to share with you some of the, I'm going to be honest here, some of the bullshit in the yoga industry.
Yeah,
as we said, the
that's
empire.
the goal, like the overarching goal is that's the yoga empire.
Yeah, because here's the thing. So again, to kind of remind us and everybody about why. Like, this isn't just bitching for the sake of bitching. No. This is because people are getting hurt. Mm-hmm. Women feel bad about their bodies because they're seeing all this stuff of what they think yoga is or isn't, what they can and can't do or whatever. Everything has bunny ears quotes around it.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to bring to light so that people understand at the end of the day, our entire goal, I think, is to help people understand yoga is for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were talking before we started recording, it's almost as though there's more than one type of yoga, not even in the styles of yoga, but we've almost divided it into yoga that you do in a studio and social media yoga, which we were discussing a little bit. Everybody that uses Instagram knows that there are Instagram models or Instagram musicians or people that are trying to get likes so that they can hopefully get sponsorship. Well, that applies to yoga as well. And we were kind of discussing one of these dirty little secrets about some of the companies that make expensive yoga clothes, which you probably will never see one of us wearing.
No.
These are like $6 on clearance. Is that companies that make yoga clothes will sponsor Instagram yogis. So they will send them these clothes at a discount, of course, and then the deal is that the individual wearing these clothes makes a whole bunch of posts to really cool shit, the most pretzely of yoga poses they possibly can, and then hashtag those pants. But not everybody knows that.
Right.
Not everybody that is maybe new to yoga, that is thinking about doing yoga, understands that that's a huge piece of it. That's what you see. You don't see people, well, I mean, if you follow us on Instagram, you see us, but we're not the ones that you see the most of.
Right.
The people in like the Target t-shirt and like the $6 pants.
Thrift store other than actually
Wu-Tang Clan represent hoodies.
Right.
It's you see the people in the pants that cost $200 and you feel like, one, your body doesn't do that. Two, you can't afford to dress like that, so you're already defeated.
Right, and if that's what yoga looks like, then I must not be, yoga must not be for me.
Right.
And it just perpetuates the bad feelings that I think, yoga is not the only thing that's creating bad feelings amongst women and whatnot, but there are a lot of things that we could get into. However, yoga should be the last thing making you feel bad about yourself.
I know.
It really is. And I think some of what frustrates me about this story about the sponsorship and the hashtag, insert yoga brand here, is that this is sometimes going on with yoga teachers that we know, like in the city that you may have gone to.
Right. And I feel like it's predatory on behalf of the companies.
Yeah.
Because it's this big system. We're talking about yoga as the empire and we're the rebels, but people realize, the people that make the expensive clothing realize that yoga teachers want these things. So they create these little teeny, snacks for them to like 15% off or 10% off, which if your pants are $200 is not really.
That's still a lot of money.
That's still a lot of money for the pants. So they're giving like yoga teachers like these little nibbles so that they can look like a yoga teacher. But then at the same time, they're making so much money just by perpetuating that image. So it's just, I think people don't realize that when they see the Instagram yogi with 1 billion followers, that's what's happening.
Yeah, and that's disgusting. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, my phone was on. Hold on, let me turn it off. And so the other thing that that we were talking about was the Canadian, your new Canadian buddy.
Yeah, call-in yoga.
Simple as that, just call-in yoga.
I think so. I'll have to, let me double check so I can give him a shout out, because he is also a yoga nerd.
Yeah, that he's trying to share like
Call-in
the truth.
yoga, COLIN Yogin, YOGIN. So he's in Canada.
And this is Instagram.
This is Instagram, yeah. He made a post that was very divisive. It was one of those posts, there's a meme out there that says hard pills to swallow, and then usually underneath it lists something that you don't want to hear. And he posted one that was hard pills to swallow, and underneath it said, those inspirational yoga quotes you post were likely written by an abuser. And I was like, oh, that's true. Somebody's saying it. And he had a picture of, I think, Bikram and someone else on there. I think it was, I don't remember because there are so many. But I was like, yes, somebody's saying it. So I started kind of realizing, like, there are other people out there that are kind of like saying, hey, yoga is changing, and that can be good, that can be bad, but like we should talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, so this is also a male.
It's
saying this stuff, which is great.
Yeah, I thought that was great too.
Yeah, and so the thing that so you and I talked about this a lot about. So do we want to get into the true yoga? What's real yoga?
Gosh, I feel like we could try.
So, so there's sort of two sides to this. As teachers, there's one sort of conflict, and as an actual student of yoga, practicing my own practice, there's similar but different conflict, because, so as teachers, we are teaching yoga. We're sharing the information and trying to explain to people what is yoga,
right? What
has it been? And I think these days, one thing that has bubbled up for me anyway is that tradition. Just because it's always been, doesn't mean it still should be.
Right.
However, so got into the discussion with my boyfriend for Christmas about what we were going to make for Christmas dinner, because his family was coming over, and we're like, he's like, well, the tradition is that you have turkey and ham and all these things, and I'm like, well, screw tradition, we're having waffles.
And waffles taste better, and I don't eat meat.
Yeah, and so it's like, but just because that it's always been that way doesn't mean that you have to continue that, and we're seeing that with the way that we've treated African Americans, the way that we've treated all brown people, the way that we've treated, women and so forth. It's like, just because women have always been paid less doesn't mean that that's right,
Right.
However, when it comes to something like, the traditions of yoga, I think it's still important because yoga is, there's an educational piece to it.
Right.
It's a
The
philosophy
of it, right?
Yeah, there are things that you do, and for some of them there's a reason why. For some of them, their reason why is sort of dubious to me. So,
Right.
So I think it's worthwhile to look at the tradition of something, but then also recognize, well, there are some things that have always been, but that doesn't mean that we need to still do them.
Right, and if you even look at, so in yoga philosophy, there are a few different texts that people will look at. For yoga teachers, there are a few that they like us to look at. The Yoga Sutras is one. Sometimes the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which I love to say and I mess up sometimes.
Yes.
That's another one. But the sutras, somewhere in there, it says that women should not be teaching yoga.
Yeah.
Because teachers or gurus, which guru just means teacher, but
Yeah.
we've already talked about that. See the episode on guru culture. We know that back then, they didn't want women to be gurus. So at the time that was written, it was kind of part of yoga culture that women don't teach. And now, if you look in the United States or just in Western culture, it's mostly women teaching. So are we going to look at every single thing and say it has to continue to be done this way when we're already not paying attention to the rules? We're already doing things differently. Or like that thing we were talking about before in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It mentions that yoga should be a secret kept between you and your guru, and that you shouldn't share it with other people. Well, obviously that's not working, right? Because it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry across, the entire world at this point. So, what do we as yoga teachers, yoga practitioners, what do we keep? And what do we bring up to the surface to talk about and say, this isn't right, this isn't okay, like a lot of the culture around gurus, and what do we just say, we don't need that anymore, right? About. That's where it gets tricky. That's where we're like, what is yoga anyway? Right, I don't know.
Well, I think, so the argument of keeping yoga a secret, keeping your practice a secret. So I don't really know the intention behind that. However, here's my thought. So I'm not gonna say I'm gonna play devil's advocate because that pisses me off.
Right.
But I really don't like that.
Actually, yeah.
However, so one thing that I'm thinking though is it's kind of like if you do something good, if you help the old lady across the street, then if you go on social media and tell everybody, hey, I did this great thing, I walked this old lady across the street, that sort of negates the selflessness of the deed.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if perhaps there's that notion behind. So perhaps if you keep it a secret, it's so that you're not turning into Bikram Chaudhry. Like, look how enlightened I am.
Right.
I am so yogi.
My yoga is the only, I think he was one where he said his yoga was the only true yoga.
Yeah.
105 degrees with the humidifier set to like 40% is the only true yoga.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not yoga unless you're melting.
Right.
And half naked.
And on a room filled with carpet. Ew.
Yeah. 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 You're not a true guru unless you've got a table made out of women.
That
you're
you
able
can
to
walk
sit on.
across. Goodness. I'm losing track of my original thought process because now I'm just thinking about carpeted rooms that are heated to 105 degrees.
That's nasty.
Yeah, I'm
That
really
is
grossed
gross.
out now.
So,
what we're talking about.
I'm not true. Yeah, so I think that it's valuable. Okay, so I'm gonna throw this out here too. It's kind of like the Bible, whereas there's this thing that was written over 2,000 years ago,
by humans.
And over the course of 2,500 years, since the first page was written, life has changed, and things that were true then. So, for example, I have studied the Bible, and the things that are written in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, these things are things that are teaching you how to live in that culture. It's a handbook. And so the reason why you don't eat pork, the reason why you don't eat certain things, the reason why you do things in a certain way, I'm sure there was plenty of misogyny, so don't get me wrong. However, there was a way of doing things because if you're living in the desert, there's just certain shit that is not going to make it across the desert.
And then even other little things, like there are things in there about how to treat your slaves. So that's not cool. Like, we know slavery is bad now, but that was part of the way things were at that time. So taking that mindset of, well, this is how it is, and this is how it always will be, doesn't serve
Right.
us.
Right. And so I think my point with that, I could literally talk for days about the topic of the Bible and
Right.
moving in, evolution of life between when it was written and now. However,
Right.
coming back to yoga, which is arguably about the same age,
Mhm.
talking about something that's, I think actually our yoga is supposed to be a little bit old, maybe twice as old.
Well, Hinduism is the oldest religion,
Yeah.
and yoga came out of Hinduism.
Yeah.
So probably
It's very old.
Yeah.
5,000, maybe some. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm
It's
bad
old.
with numbers.
Yeah, it's very old.
real old.
But the point is that life was different back then. We had different knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of stuff. So we were just talking about Buddhists and,
Mhm.
the earliest neuroscientists, really.
For real, neuroplasticity is just woven into Buddhism. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so a lot of things they got right.
Mhm.
And we're finding science now with research and studies and better technology, fMRIs and things like that. We're able to prove some of the things that were said thousands of years ago.
Right.
Like, great, okay, well, we'll keep that thing.
Right.
But there's plenty that we're doing, that we're finding out that's like, okay, maybe we should throw that away.
Right.
And I think you have to be strong enough in your yoga beliefs, your ability to, I guess detachment that's more of a Buddhist thing and less a yoga thing. But there's still some of that there where try not to get attached to things. So if you're,
Right.
so a healthy attachment, a healthy detachment from yoga can allow you the room to say, this we need to move off to the side.
I think that detachment or a lack of attachment to outcome is one of the really cool things that I like about yoga and that we could all probably benefit from in a yoga practice too. So trying not to get attached to the outcome of your practice, of your class that day, of a certain pose. So I think that's a really good one. And another thing that I think that it was yesterday, this week is a blur. I was saying like I hate being wrong. Like I really hate being wrong, but now that I'm older, I like to admit to it. Yes. So I kind of like to realize that I was wrong about something, but I want to like get it out and admit to it. Oh, I remember.
It was the FDA.
So I said in the last podcast, I was talking about the FDA's guidelines for fitness, and I meant the Surgeon General's guidelines, and this was like eating away at me so much that I texted Burgundy. I was like, "Can you change it about the Surgeon General?" Like it was just like they're like in my head, they're similar government entities. It was like not a big deal, but being able to like look at that and go, oh, it was wrong, so let's just talk about how that was wrong and go back. It's that easy. Like we can literally look at things from the past and say, I messed up or that's messed up, and then change how we approach the future.
Yes. yeah, simple as that. So I think that it's a worthwhile practice to look at yoga and say, there are some traditions that make yoga what it is. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness, meditation, and the practice of getting your mind prepared and that plasticity, the detachment from outcome. These are the things that I think, and this is a good discussion piece. If you guys disagree, I would love to hear
I know.
What do you think yoga is?
I want to hear more from our people that are watching or listening.
Yeah.
In general.
Because I truly, my beliefs, and that's the thing with the whole guru thing, like, just because if you come to our classes, if you're listening to this, if you disagree, that's your right to disagree. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Everything should be a discussion. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't just be one guy saying, this is what yoga is. That's where things go sideways. Is when you listen to one person saying, this is what it is. And there has to be room for discussion to say, hold up, I don't agree with you.
Right. I always get very concerned when I hear somebody saying that they're doing something that's way out there because their yoga teacher told them to, and it has nothing to do with yoga. But it's like, why was your yoga teacher giving you advice that a doctor or a nurse should have been giving you?
Right.
That's a boundary issue. That's a boundary issue that I think is really easy to run into in the yoga world, because I think yoga teachers, they want to help people, right? And if somebody comes to them with a question, like a student who maybe needs that person, they're kind of like, oh God, I want to help someone. So their knee jerk is to help rather than put up that boundary and say, I'm not qualified to answer that. Maybe you should try this. So even just having discussions like that where you admit to the fact that this is my scope, you're falling out of that scope, so I'm not going to deal with that, right?
Yeah, so I think, so summarizing this, number one, the people on Instagram may not be representing yoga as accurately as we would like.
Right. I would say to people watching, listening, look into, if you don't know about hypermobility, I think we've talked about hypermobility a bit. It's somebody that is hypermobile, so their joints are very, very flexible naturally, and a lot of times those people end up in gymnastics or yoga or flexibility-based things because it's easier for them.
Yeah.
And when you're seeing certain people on Instagram that are doing some of these things, you're not getting the full picture. No. You're not seeing them warm up, if they warmed up, which they probably did, or there's so many yogis out there that are in it because they started from a place of hypermobility. I'm going to cop to that. I'm 100% one of those people. I did dance because I was already hypermobile, and then once I got older, I realized, like, oh, I can always touch my toes. So I thought, well, yoga's probably a good fit for me. So it wasn't necessarily like, I'm going to go kick ass at yoga. It was more like, maybe it won't be that hard. Maybe this will be like an activity that I can do that I'm going to excel at. So you're not seeing that picture. You're not seeing the warm-up. You're not seeing the people that are maybe already able to get their foot behind their head.
Yeah.
You're not getting any of that. You don't know how many years they've been
There's
practicing.
also genetics.
There's genetics. There's the rotation of somebody's hips. My hips rotate inward more than they do outward, which has created problems for me. Some people have very outwardly rotated hips, so they're going to be able to do a little bit more with their yoga practice. And you don't get that picture. Right. You just see the hashtags.
So it's not fair to compare yourself. It's
right.
Let's put those people to the side, and no judgment. We're just saying, be mindful of the people on Instagram.
Right.
This is for you to say to yourself, you know what? I don't know anything about this person, or I don't know enough, and I'm not going to compare myself. I'm going to practice ahimsa, non-violence. I'm going to be
towards yourself.
happy with myself, and practice santosha, contentment.
Yes.
And say, you know what? This is the body that I have. I'm going to practice yoga with what I have right here. Mm-hmm. Maybe I do want to be stronger. Fair. However, I'm not going to say, you know what? I'm going to look like XYZ person. I want to get my body so that it feels good. Mm-hmm. I want to feel strong in my body, how I feel strong, how I feel good.
Right. And I think that I was commenting on something on Facebook for you this week or last week. I was saying something like, being naturally flexible and putting your feet behind your head every day isn't going to keep you from falling down when you're old.
It's true.
You've got to keep it balanced out with strength and other things to stabilize. That's, I think, another thing that we don't always see is sometimes when somebody has got the pretzel pose going, where maybe they're in a very wide, almost like split. Sometimes there's destabilization that's already happening for that person, and they're like a couple, splits away from an injury. So you don't get the whole picture at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, did we beat this to death?
We could probably do that more, but it would be a 6-hour podcast, and
nobody wants to listen to 6 hours. We'll break this up.
Yeah.
We'll have another conversation that's very similar.
Yeah, and maybe ask questions.
Yeah.
Viewers, listeners, if you agree, disagree, maybe there are things that you're wondering about, that would be wonderful to have questions or even stories that you would like to share.
Yeah.
We won't tell anybody your name if you
right.
want to share something.
Yeah. So thank you for watching. Please click like or subscribe. And thank you to all the Patreon patrons who are supporting us as well. I appreciate it. We're really enjoying all of the people that are helping to support this. So until next time, we'll be yoga rebels. We need to think of some last thing to say.
I know, something flashy.
Go you!